When you start getting into or even try to perform a Pokemon speedrun, there are a bunch of little things that you have to keep in mind that we're not allowed to do. Some for obvious reasons and others not so much. So today, I'm here to share with you all a list of those things that you might just find weird since Pokemon speedrunners are not allowed to do it. I say in confidence that this right here is the greatest controller in the world, and rightfully so when it's 8BitO. If you've never used a controller from them, then you should do yourself a favor and get one even if you aren't a speedrunner that needs a really precise controller. As someone who's used a multitude of their controllers for years on end, the quality of their controllers speak for itself, especially from one of my recent favorites, the Ultimate 2 Bluetooth controller. This controller is a gorgeous piece of art. With its millions of buttons, you might find a surprising use for with how much you can just program it to your needs. For me, I turn off the fancy lights because I have ancient eyes, and I also like having the back buttons be L3 and R3 for games like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which annoyingly puts the boost button on stick clicking. Why? I don't know. And now I don't have to care. But the fun buttons don't stop there. With the slider in the back that makes it so your trigger buttons need less force to push down. And when you unbox this thing, you get a sick charger dock you can place in a comfy spot, and it'll do most of everything for you. For example, this hidden dongle at the bottom lets you use it as an easy way to connect to your PC using the wire in 2.4 mode for wireless controller gaming, and turns it off to charge when you stick it back on top of it. And if you want to connect it to a console like your Switch 1 or 2, flick it back to Bluetooth mode and you're set. Also, turbo on this thing is seriously amazing, and they come with a variety of colors. I just chose yellow because it's a side exclusive apparently, so I'm a happy gamer completing my collection. It's all simple to use, fun to peruse, and that's what you get with 8BitO. And if you want one for yourself, link to my favorite controllers of all time will be in the description. Thanks again to 8BitO for this amazing sponsorship opportunity. To get things started, let's talk about the fact that Pokemon speedrunners are not allowed to abuse the move Rage in Generation 4 Pokemon games. For those that don't know what the move Rage is or does, it's a move that existed in Generations 1 through 7 that builds in power if an opponent hits you with a move after you use Rage. Rage is quite a staple in Gen 2 speedruns, but not really used in any other Pokemon games after Gold, Silver, or Crystal, especially in the Generation 4 games. This is because the move was programmed quite terribly to the point where it's kind of overpowered. One of those weird overpowered effects is that you can keep earning a Rage boost even if you swap to another move. And what's even crazier is that Rage also has an added effect on top of this that stops moves from inflicting what's called a volatile status. For example, using Rage while under the affliction of the move Curse will cause the curse to go away after swapping to another move the following turn. But we're not stopping just there, because things get even weirder when you trigger the Rage glitch while your Pokemon is under a substitute, because moves that shouldn't pass through the substitute somehow still do. And these aren't the only moves that just kinda disappear, because the list of volatile conditions also includes Binding, Confusion, Infatuation, Torment, Trapping, and finally, Transforming. Transforming with this glitch is quite hilarious, because if the transform is removed in this way, the transformed Pokemon gets to keep its transform moveset permanently after the battle. Pretty crazy, right? So why does this happen exactly? Well, it's all because of a programming error triggered by landing a hit with the move Rage, followed by switching to a different move. Because using Rage this way in Generation 4 causes the game to reset some of the unintended battle flags instead of resetting those Rage boosts like it should. And because this is a glitch, speedrunners are not allowed to use it in a glitchless speedrun. The second weird thing we're not allowed to do is speedrun Gen 1 and 2 games through the Game Boy Tower feature in Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2. You would think that with this being on official hardware, it would actually make for a great case for allowing it on an official speedrunning leaderboard. But the answer to why it's banned is more so hidden in how accurately the game is emulated on a Nintendo 64, which is pretty horribly. Apparently the frame rate goes crazier than Scarlet and Violet at times, and it's technically faster than the accepted consoles thanks to a higher frame rate, faster load times, as well as an officially licensed speed up button. And this isn't the only official hardware that's been banned for speedrunning purposes. The original Super Game Boy that lets you play Game Boy games on the Super Nintendo is also banned due to its inaccuracies. Even the Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console versions were considered for a ban for the same reasons, since these inaccuracies accuracies are so bad that any RNG manipulations that have been developed for Gen 1 and 2 games will not work on these banned consoles or the 3DS version. And even though this is all official hardware, at the end of the day, it's more about what the speedrunning community wants than it is about having the fastest console sometimes. Now, this next weird thing might be considered potentially controversial decision by speedrunners, because the fifth weird thing speedrunners are not allowed to do is trade Pokemon into the game you're speedrunning on from another game. I know the slogan of Pokemon is usually about catching them all, making friends, and completing your Pokedex, but speedrunning isn't about friendship. Well, sometimes it actually is, because trading is allowed on very specific categories. Prime example of this is the diploma category in the Pokemon Let's Go games. Since version exclusive Pokemon exist, you can't exactly catch every single Pokemon on one copy of the game. So in order to have a category that can, trading becomes specifically allowed in order to get all 150 Pokemon required to receive the catching diploma. But for categories such as Fire Red Round 2 that require you to catch 60 Pokemon, do not allow trades from other games. And the same goes for most of the other categories on the main leaderboards. Why exactly? Well, think about every single action you may have taken on that second game that you're trading from. You've probably already completed the speedrunning goal you're setting out to do on that second copy. And if outside trading was ever allowed, speedrunning would become way too simplified, turning the speedrun from what might have been a cool catching category to a super boring trade fest. Not only this, but you can't exactly check if someone opened up PK Hex and hacked in the Pokemon being traded in for a speedrun. And either way, trading in a Pokemon from another game would likely make the run super boring in most cases, especially if you traded in something that was super over leveled. The only other exception to this is what's called a trade alt main Pokemon speedrun, which basically trades a Pokemon over that's a level equal to the starter Pokemon so that you can speedrun with some of your favorite Pokemon from the very beginning of the game. And while I'm glad these exist so we can have fun with speedruns like this, they don't exactly belong on the main leaderboards. With that out of the way, this now brings us to the second to last weird thing speedrunners are not allowed to do, which is to use certain online features during a Pokemon speedrun. When it comes to online features in Pokemon games, there are a ton of really cool ones like surprise trading, getting power-ups, or participating in raid battles with your friends. But all of these features are not allowed to be used in a speedrun. Why exactly? Well, think about it this way. These features give you access to a bunch of Pokemon and resources you normally wouldn't have access to, which is even the case with raids since it would normally just be you and a bunch of NPCs. And the thing about having access to this is it can be heavily skewed in favor of someone with a bigger audience, because a lot of the times speedrunners will end up streaming their attempts, and whoever has the biggest audience would likely receive more benefits from allowing online features in a speedrun. And needless to say, popularity should never be the deciding factor in any speedrun. But there are some fun and interesting exceptions to this rule. Wonder Trade and Surprise Trade speedruns have been a thing since the features were introduced. But what I think is most fun about online multiplayer speedruns are Dynamax Adventure speedruns with friends. The concept of a Dynamax Adventure speedrun is to basically get a bunch of friends together to steamroll through all the random Pokemon that show up in a Dynamax Adventure. Usually the way this works is one person will take a leadership role to direct what mons people should pick, while everyone else does their best to follow along and just have some fun. And even though these rules are in place, fun is arguably one of the most important factors in speedrunning. And speaking of fun, we're on to the final weird thing that speedrunners are not allowed to do, which is being allowed to access and use O-Powers in Generation 6 Pokemon games. For those that don't know what O-Powers are, they are the precursor to Roto Boost in Pokemon Ultra Moon, letting you boost things like friendship, catch rates, damage, or even the speed of a Pokemon in a battle. You'll typically start with a set amount of them, and as time goes on, the O-Powers will recharge, giving you even more. And the wild thing about these boosts is you can actually use O-Powers and use X items on the exact same turn, earning you 2 boosts at once. This is quite a powerful buff. But why exactly are they banned? Well, initially, speedrunners thought that these power-ups were only available through online features that would unfairly allow you to receive power-ups from a bunch of friends on your friends list. But once Pokemon speedrunner Swiftaloo pointed out that there are O-Powers you can get without going online, things started to look up a bit for the feature. And as it turns out, it saved an entire minute in Pokemon X and Y speedruns. But to this day, it never got unbanned. Weird, right? What could have possibly caused this time save to still not be allowed to this day? Well, the answer is actually fun. The way the current X and Y route works is that you end up swapping your main around between 6 different Pokemon. This is because there's not a single Pokemon in the game that handles every fight on its own optimally, and one specific Pokemon is quite a headache to catch, which is the wrestling bird Hawlucha. Unfortunately, we are forced to catch this thing in a luxury ball, which increases the friendship earned throughout the entire game. And when you add O powers to the equation, not only does it make this catch much easier, but you can also boost friendship for the required lucky egg item you get for earning max friendship by the end of the 4th gym. And getting this much friendship is normally not guaranteed, but becomes quite trivial with the use of O powers. The same exact thing can be said with O powers that boost damage, because the risky fights that waste a ton of time from setting up no longer need to waste that time, because as I mentioned before, O powers let you power up and attack on the exact same turn. With this being such a broken strategy that makes speedruns way easier, speedrunners opted to keep O powers banned, since the interesting and heart-pumping sections of Pokemon X and Y would be a lot less interesting if they were unbanned, making the run more fun for the community and keeping it alive in a much more interesting state, thanks to another weird thing that Pokemon speedrunners are not allowed to do. If you managed to get this far, thanks so much for watching. I hope you'll consider subscribing and let me know if I should do more speedrunning content like this in the future.